So, my friends, for many years, I dedicated my life since I was a kid to trying to figure out what this is. My parents escaped the Soviet Union. They were dissidents. They stood up against the Soviet evil empire. And when we escaped that monstrosity and came to the West when I was a little kid, and I just fell in love with America. I love this country so much. Even as a 5-year-old, even though you intellectually don't know what freedom is, you can breathe it. And I love this country so much. And as I was growing older, there were these people that were telling my parents to shut up, and they're fascists and racists, and where we came from is such a beautiful place, and where we are now is this awful place that needs to be destroyed. And I was wondering, who are these people? And a lot of them were academics in the universities, and my father and my mother explained to me, these are leftists. So I thought, okay, so who are these people? And I began to study them, because I have a personal grudge against them, because their idea murdered millions of my people. I have family that died in the Gulag. Both of my grandfathers were murdered by the KGB. And so these are the people that enable this. When you look at Bernie Sanders and Cortez and these people, don't get it, do not mistake this. They are enabling this. And also there is malice in their hearts, and that's what I want to discuss today and why I wrote my book. So, United in Hate was one chapter for me, because I wrote about the unity between the left and Islam, just as I gave the background of the unity between the left and communism. And so, after United in Hate, I do a lot of readings on psychology, and so I was studying psychopaths. It's very, very interesting how psychopaths operate. And my friends, once you read my book, or perhaps you already know, oh yeah, you might even be married to one. It might be an ex. It could be somebody at your work. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes when I give the book to people, I'm like, oh no, because I know that, it's either the husband or the wife. It transcends gender. But they have an operation. They have a tactical setup. And once you read it, you begin to recognize, that's that person at my work. Oh, that's my neighbor. But they're all over the place. But there's a certain step-by-step system by which they operate. There's a romance stage. There's a seduction stage. There's a charming stage. Then they class. Once they get their claws into you, a new stage begins. And there's different steps during that stage, and the devouring begins. While I was studying the Islamization of America and of the West, every single step that I'm studying, and I'm talking about every single step, and so I began to write this book, and I show that every single step that psychopaths employ in their game is exactly what Islam is doing to us today. I'm not going to give too many spoiler alerts today. 2 examples off the top of my head, and I'm sure you know people like this, but Islam is doing it to us. After the clasping stage, when they have you, a psychopath is very good at punching you in the face, and then he's just really sad what a hard day he's having. So psychopaths are very good. They punch you in the face. Within 30 seconds, they're pouting and sulking in a corner, and you're apologizing to them. Now, I'm not saying you necessarily, because maybe some of you are bright and courageous and you don't fall into that trap, but be very careful, because if you're not wise, it can happen very quickly, especially to the people who want to be deceived, right? Willful blindness. So that's one stage. Look at what's happening today. Just very recently in France, Allahu Akbar, people are getting stabbed. Kafirs are getting stabbed. Unbelievers are getting stabbed. Within 30 seconds, what is the news coverage? CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post. What's the news coverage? Muslims are fearing a backlash. They don't even spend time talking about why this guy stabbed people, what he believes, what he read. Within 30 seconds, Muslims are fearing a backlash, and what happens next? Oh, we're so sorry, we're Islamophobic, we're going to try harder. Do you want a couple prayer rooms extra in this place? Okay, we'll ban bacon over here. Okay, we'll make sure Robert Spencer's not allowed to speak here. Is that better? You see what's happening? Don't mistake this. This is all choreographed. It's all by design. But this is one of the stages. Let me go into the beginning, just as an opening to discuss my book. In the beginning, there's a charming stage. This is before they got their claws into you. The charming stage is connected to what they've learned from the Garden of Eden, because psychopaths follow their master's lessons. I'm easily distracted, I'm sorry. They follow their master in the Garden of Eden. And so, and Dinesh D'Souza has done a great job in documenting this in terms of how the left knows very well how to tell you that what you need to do is in your interest. When the serpent approached Eve and he said, this is in your interest. I'm looking out for your interests. I'm doing this for you, knowing that what you're going to do will be your downfall. And so this is very much part of the stage. Now, it's already common sense. I can give you many examples on the Islamic front of what CARE and ISNA are telling us what to do that's in our interest. Like CARE just recently did about Laura Loomer, telling Twitter that she's got to go. It's in your interest. But this is in the beginning. Also in the beginning stage, and I document all of this in my book, I show the stages, and then I show the Islamic stages. So in the beginning of the psychopath stage, there's also a tactic of we are very much alike stage. We all know people like this. Be very wary of them. And it's okay when somebody says to you once, we're a lot alike. But if they keep stressing it all the time, and especially you hardly know them, it's a sign. But we're so much alike. We are soulmates. You know, we're so much alike. And that's what the psychopaths do. Let's switch over for a minute into is the Islamization of America. CARE, ISNA, MSA, these Muslim Brotherhood front groups. Oh, wow, what do we see during the interfaith dialogue? The Christians just salivating to be deceived, just salivating when the interfaith dialogue starts. Oh, the desire to be deceived when it comes to Stockholm Syndrome is just out of this world. And what do we see? We love Jesus. You love Jesus? We love Jesus. You respect Jesus? We respect Jesus. You believe in Jesus? We believe in Jesus. And the demi-Christians, oh, everything's going to be okay now. That Robert Spencer and Pamela Geller, what are they talking about? Oh, terrible people. Now the smart, courageous Christian who doesn't need to be deceived for his own narcissistic emotional reasons will say right away, excuse me, did Jesus die on the cross for our salvation? Is Jesus a member of the Holy Trinity? Is Jesus divine? And then they turn ashen white and run away. But I'm showing that that's another one of their tactics. So this goes on and on. I've given 2 examples here. So what my book does is I've given 2 steps. There are many, many steps. So today, when I know that I only have 15, 20 minutes left, what do you do during a speech? So instead of me trying to go through all my points and trying to fit and cram all this in 20 minutes, I think it's better just to tell 2 or 3 stories because you get the idea and you'll be able to read my book. But this is some very deep stuff going on, and it's evil. And part of this, the victim stage, is psychopaths are also experts at groundless accusations. It's very important, groundless accusations. Some of the people I grew up with, for instance, cheaters on their spouses, male and female. But I'll never forget, one of them told me, Jamie, I get away with it all the time. The key is just to come into the house and be very angry and accuse her of something. Get away with it every time. I was like, oh, okay. Is that what you do? Groundless accusations to put the person on the defensive. Racist, Islamophobe, white supremacist. You see, they're very, very clever, but do not, again, get this twisted. This is by design. And so the psychopaths engage in groundless accusations constantly. And this is part of the paradigm of what we're facing today in terms of what Islam is doing to us. Now, I explore the psychology of our surrender connected to this. So this is what I just want to talk about for a minute because it fascinates me. And I think that maybe just 2 or 3 anecdotes will suffice for a person that has to spend just 15 minutes talking about his book. But what is the psychology of our surrender? Because we are surrendering, my friends. We are surrendering. And the people last night that are sitting listening, and we have a president that's saying that America is better than ever and more prosperous than ever, and unemployment is at the lowest, and the best employment record for Black Americans and Hispanic Americans, and the progress of women, etc. And people are just seething. The leftists are seething in the audience. What is that? But it's very much connected to what I'm studying, because that's the devil right there. And they're in power, and they are winning. And I want to discuss their tactics and how it works. And that's what my book discusses. So let me tell you an anecdote that's at the core of my study. And it's at the core of what we're facing today. Steve Amundsen, that's on 3rd Street Promenade. Also, we have a hero here with us today, Diane Zinn, that also does very important work on that level. And I've been down there. And I'm going to tell you one exchange that happens down there. 15 girls, 15 women in hijab, just screaming at us. Louis Leinhardt, for instance, in the back there, he's a preacher down there. Everybody give him a hand, please. Always risking his life down there. Louis, can you get up for a minute? This is a gentleman that gets threatened down there about 50 times an evening. But they're screaming at him and at me and at Steve. You and the 15 hijabi women. You don't know anything. We can wear the hijab if we want to. We're free. We're equal. Shut up. Shut up. Racist. And the anger, it's very interesting, their anger. Their anger is very disproportional to me and what I'm doing and what I'm saying. But it's very important to keep this in mind, because where is that anger really from, and what is it about? So as they're screaming at me that I'm wrong and that we're wrong, all of a sudden, this has happened many times, this Arab man out of nowhere comes out and goes, "Ah!" and starts screaming, and they run very quickly away. And then Louis, who has a great sense of humor, will say, "Listen to your master, bye-bye." And they run away. But very interesting, they hate me, and they're screaming with rage and anger at me that I'm discussing Islamic gender apartheid and that I'm actually trying to free them and I'm on their side. But they're screaming at me, but then their master comes up and tells them to get lost, and they run away. Now think about this, because the dynamics here are very, very important to understand. This is at the core of our struggle today. During that time, I take out my camera and I take a picture. Also very interesting, when you deal with totalitarian ideologies and their members, what pictures do. And the train is never late. They get very frightened, and the train is never late. It takes about 15, 20 minutes, and then I'm talking to somebody and the knock comes. Yeah. The hijabi girl that was just screaming at me about what a racist Islamophobe I am and how I am so wrong about everything I'm saying and how free she is and she can do whatever she wants just with rage. Excuse me, can you delete that picture, please? And I'm like, pardon me? If when I go back to Saudi Arabia, I'm showing my hair, I'm wearing this, if my parents see me, I'm going to get killed. I'm going to get, please. I say, no problem. I delete it for her and she goes away. This is very, very serious to examine here. And I'm going to introduce this theme if you leave with anything here today. It took me many years to understand this. Ingratiating yourself with your potential executioner. Ingratiating yourself with your potential executioner, and as Nani Darwish has discussed on my show and in her writings, to out-radicalize your potential executioner. So when you see those women in the black garbage bags in Iran and in Saudi Arabia and in Pakistan running around with the canes, whipping the women that aren't in those bags, they're out-radicalizing their potential executioners. They will get killed if they're like them. But in order to be accepted and to survive in their own way, they're trying to ingratiate themselves and to out-radicalize them. Now, this exists on the left. I have some friendships, some people in my extended family. Oh, do they hate me? I'm wrong about Trump. And Jamie's a right-winger. Trump is so bad. But they know nothing will happen to them from me. Oh, but if the leftists in their community find out that they're even related to me, or know me, or speak to me, they're terrified of that. Do you know leftists like this? The leftists are terrified of their comrades. They're terrified of their superiors. There's been many times a leftist has said to me, why do you like Trump? And I would say, do you really want to talk about this? Because if you agreed with me, would you have any friends left? Would you have your job? You see, for leftists, it's a social life. It's how they see themselves. It's their identity. It's their social networks. It's not about what's true, because if you argue with them, as you know, when you defeat them in an argument, within 5 minutes they're arguing about something else. It doesn't matter. But this theme is very important for me to stress today, the ingratiating oneself and trying to out-radicalize your potential executioner. So my friends, that's what we're up against, because the members of the left and the members of the Islamic death cult, they're inside of this. So sometimes you run into the people that own it and run it, but you're also running into the people that are captives. But cowards in their own way, because there are brave people, and not to give Nani too much attention today, but we have people that actually sacrificed a lot in terms of their family members and so much to speak the truth. And so now let me move on to some other things with the time that I have. Embracing the indictment of your hater. Kenneth, this is very important to keep in mind, and it's part of the psychopathic paradigm. Kenneth Levin has documented this in the Oslo Syndrome. What happens to communities under siege? So in terms of the Israeli context, the Jewish people and the Israelis on the left that needed to be deceived during the Oslo process. And no matter what you show them in terms of that these people want to kill you, they begin to think, oh, just look, just a little bit more land, just a little bit more money, just a little bit more hugs, and it'll work. But the embracing of the indictment is very important to keep in mind. What are the anti-Semitic caricatures? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's true. Oh, Jews. Yeah, you're right. We do act like that. But guess what? I'm not going to act like that anymore. I'm going to de-Judify myself, and I'm not going to be one of those Jews. That's those Jews over there. To embrace the indictment of your accuser. But with the Noam Chomskys, when the Noam Chomsky Jewish individual goes to embrace Nasrallah. And now, I have to be very careful here, because it's not always that they think everything will be okay. There's two layers there. There's some that have been deluded and they think everything will be okay. And the other phenomenon takes 4 hours, and Daniel Greenfield is an expert on this. There's such a hatred of oneself that they're trying to shed themselves of their own unwanted selves, blurring themselves into a totalitarian whole, and they sacrifice their lives for it. Now, that might sound like some mumbo-jumbo at first, but people say, I don't understand. Why do these feminists go to Gaza to fight against Israel, and they all get raped there and enslaved by the Palestinian terrorists? It's the same thing that the fellow travelers did throughout the whole Cold War. There's a hatred inside for the human condition. There's a hatred inside for God's order. And so these individuals are shedding themselves of their own unwanted selves. But my point here directly, because these points do connect, but what I'm trying to crystallize here is embracing the indictment of the accuser. Not mutated, a carbon copy of that, what's happening today in terms of the kafirs, the unbelievers. You're right, we are white supremacist and racist and Islamophobic, but we're going to be good kafirs. Oh, what is that, Karen Isna and MSA? Tell us what else you don't like about the kafir. Oh, yeah, it's true. It's true. We embrace it. But guess what? We're not like those Robert Spencers and Pamela Gellers over there. We're the good kafirs. We're the good unbelievers. It's very important to keep this in mind. It's embracing the indictment of the accuser. And when this occurs, they hate the dissidents. The prisoner of the psychopath often hates the person telling him or her the truth and that wants to rescue them. And they begin to hate the truth teller and the resistor. So why Laura Loomer and Tommy Robinson and Anne-Marie Waters are not on Twitter anymore? Why Louis Leinhart and Steve Amundsen and David Horowitz and Mark Tapson and Daniel Greenfield and Nani Darwish, why we're called all these names, not just by the Islamic supremacists, but by their minions on the left. And so this is their process of what they're doing. I'm just trying to think here of 5 more minutes of what to fit in today, of what my book is about, because these are the dynamics that are happening today. I really have to stress one more time what I just mentioned about why what the leftist psychology is when the radical feminists are marching side by side with Islamists, screaming Allahu Akbar. They will be extinguished within 30 seconds if that Islamist gets into power. And you always hear, well, why do they do that? Why do they do that? It doesn't make any sense. And that always really bothers me, to be honest with you. Whenever I go on shows or I see it on TV, are we ever going to move on to the next stage? It's the same questions over and over. Why do they do that? You know, Bill O'Reilly used to really get on my nerves. That thing that he played with the "we're fair and balanced" thing. Bill, are you ever going to move on? Oh, why is he doing this? Well, why is Obama doing this? Why are they doing this? Well, invite David Horowitz on your program and he'll explain it to you and then we can move forward because it makes complete sense. They're leftists. And so it's called negative identification. And David Potter has written about this. And negative identification is what the left is about. It's when you have not identified with your environment or you haven't been able to identify with God's order. So not necessarily David Potter on this issue, but what I've found is, and I'm not saying it's greatly original, I'm just synthesizing this. When a leftist cannot accept God's order, he cannot accept God's hierarchy, God's creation, he engages in negative identification. So he or she do not positively identify with their own environment, so they begin to fantasize and worship foreign adversary environments. Okay, so listen carefully because this explains the left's romance with the Soviet Union. It explains the left's romance with Islam today. They're shedding themselves of their own unwanted selves because they hate the order, they hate the human condition. And so they feel a sense of power and meaning by losing themselves and blurring themselves into a totalitarian whole. And Daniel Greenfield is much better on this in some ways than I am because he's explained how they find immortality, their own form of immortality through this. I want to say that what a lot of people overlook in terms of this is the sadism involved in the left. And a lot of people always think, oh, they're just very naive, you know, they just want a better world, they don't know. Yes, it's true. There are brain-dead liberals. There's different echelons of this. Of course there's brain-dead liberals. We all got that. But do not mistake it again. There's a tremendous malice in the heart of the left. And when you look at the Obamas, when you look at the Valerie Jarretts and the Hillary Clintons, do not mistake this. If they already know what happened in the Soviet Union, if you already know what happened in Maoist China, if you already know what happened in Castro's Cuba, if you already know what happened in Vietnam and you know what happened in Korea, why would you want to do this again? And so you have to understand that in that negative identification, the believer also derives a pleasure and satisfaction by vicariously living through the power exerted by the totalitarian force. So they just the people that I used to watch, let's say, that love WWF wrestling in the crowd, and they're like, yeah, right? There's a point there where they're living vicariously through, Steve Austin and, The Rock or Hulk Hogan or whatever it is. They're living vicariously through that. Now, I'm not saying it's the same thing. I'm just giving an example. So when the totalitarian Castro is torturing and imprisoning people, don't get it twisted. The leftist deep down likes that. They want to punish those people. And they support it, and it is no coincidence that they're enabling it. So I want to say that today when the leftist feminists say to me, because we're trying to save young girls from female genital mutilation and honor killings, I care about Aksa Parvez, the 16-year-old girl that was suffocated by her father in Toronto in 2008. I live there. I care about Aksa. But I'm very interested in these radical feminists that don't care about Aksa Parvez at all. But they call me names. But I know that deep down, they support the persecution of those girls. And it's called negative identification. So I just want to stress today, do not overlook the malice and the hatred that's in the heart of the left. There's a reason why Bernie Sanders was cringing last night when Trump was talking. This is a guy that partied with the Soviet Union Gulag masters. It's come out on tape now. Imagine if somebody was caught partying with neo-Nazis. So there's a hatred there. Mike, I think it would be fair to assume it's good to go on to questions in about 2 minutes. Am I right?
2 minutes is good.
2 minutes is good? What Mike says goes. We have a bizarre, before I move on, because I might lose my thought, there's a very close friend of mine here today. The title of my book and the cover of my book is due to his profound advice. Manny in the back wearing the sunglasses, please give him a hand, please. I had a very, very boring title. And he reprimanded me one night, and we came up with a great title. Thank you so much. A title means everything. Ladies and gentlemen, what I want to stress in the end is that we are the human rights people. David Horowitz, what an honor to work next to this great man for 18 years. Talk to him several times a week, if not every day. A man that cares about the rights of Muslim women and girls, genuinely cares about minorities. And this is his problem with the left. This is a member of the new left. This is a former civil rights leader that is called names, but he is the lover of Muslim people. And I want to say today, before we go, Aksa Parvez, 16-year-old girl suffocated by her father for not wearing the hijab. We think of her every day. Maideh Hojabri, an 18-year-old girl in prison in Iran today for being caught without the hijab on social media, in prison. Shaima Alawadi, killed in an honor murder here in California several years back. The left had a million hijabs campaigned for her at first because they thought it was this white supremacist that killed her. When it turned out it was an honor killing, campaign died. Leftists don't care about Shaima. They were using it for their agenda in terms of everything I was discussing. But we care about her. You'll never hear these names on CNN and MSNBC, never. Because the left enjoys their suffering. The left enjoys what's happening to these women because it's on the side of our enemies and it wants a totalitarian cult to destroy this free society. Marzieh Ibrahimi, an Iranian woman, acid attack, half of her face because she wasn't wearing the hijab. Where's Chelsea Handler? Where's Kathy Griffin? Where's Rosie O'Donnell? Where's Whoopi Goldberg? I thought the way they were for women's rights. My book explains why they're not saying anything. I wish I could talk for another 2-3 hours today. I will finish with this. Under the Obama administration, the Muslim Brotherhood approached this gentleman and his administration. They said, let us see your intelligence agency manuals. This is in 2011. We want to see them. Imagine the KGB approaching one of our administrations during the Cold War and saying, let me see your intelligence agency training manuals. We want to see what's in there. And we gave them it. Well, Obama gave them it. And the Muslim Brotherhood front groups came back and they said, take all this out of the CIA, Defense Department, FBI, take it all out. And the Obama administration obliged. They took out every reference to Islam, radical Islam, jihad, etc., etc. We violated the most important thing that Sun Tzu taught us: know your enemy. If you cannot label your enemy, you cannot make a threat assessment. A threat assessment is crucial. We could not make one during the Obama administration. Therefore, Boston Marathon Massacre, San Bernardino, Orlando. The Obama administration has blood on its hands. Leftists have blood on their hands because every single one of those attacks could have been easily prevented. Look up the story of Phil Haney that had his investigation shut down. If his investigation had been allowed, they would have been able to stop the San Bernardino massacre. Thank you, dear Lord, for Donald Trump. He is reversing those horrible policies. He started saying the name, if you caught it, brought angels around him like John Bolton. It's maybe a brief reprieve we have. I'm praying that it's a longer reprieve, but Donald Trump is reversing that tide. And with people like that in the White House, and with us trying to do as much as we can to expose the jihadist psychopath and all of his tactics, and for us to get rid of this need to be willfully blind, we will fight, we will persevere, and we will prevail. Thank you very much. Before there's questions, Daniel might know more than me, so Daniel, can you answer the questions if I don't know the answer to some of them? Okay.
Okay, first question. We've got time for a couple of questions.
Jamie, thank you very much. What are your thoughts on Pope Francis's mission right now in the Middle East and his meeting with a so-called liberal Islamic group trying to reform the faith and having a mass in Abu Dhabi? What are your thoughts about Pope Francis? Is he gullible?
I was raised a Catholic. Not completely sure what I am anymore, but I'm a Christian and I believe in Jesus Christ. I'm just, the Catholic thing, I'm not so, amen. But I will say that this is a bad pope. And I do not believe that he's gullible. I do not believe he's naive. And I don't want to scare people today too much because as a Christian, I've studied the prophecies and that in the end there might be some dark forces. But I definitely think that Obama is part of that. And I think that the Pope, unfortunately, is part of something very, very bad.
Okay, we're going to have Brent Gold, and then I'll go up to Brock right after Brent.
Hi, Jamie. Thank you so much. By any chance, do you know historically, or at what point, Christians and Jews tricked themselves into believing that Allah is the same God they believe in? And whereas I see Allah very simply as the devil and Muhammad as a sociopathic prophet, but they keep demanding it's all the same God. Do you know where that came from?
Right. My advice to you would be stop beating around the bush and say what you really think. Well, absolutely. Look, once again, I think Nani has won. How many times am I going to mention you now today? But her book, Wholly Different, crucial, showing that it's not the same. But I will say, just this willful blindness. But the left is carrying this out for them. Just the other day, you know, I'm watching this, and Daniel, great article, what does Allahu Akbar really mean? Or we've done a show on that, but he's written on this. But so you see the news coverage on this. It's just incredible how they're carrying out the work for the jihadist psychopath. The jihadist is screaming Allahu Akbar, stabbing people, and then of course, you know, it's because he didn't have a job and it's global warming and he's mentally ill. Jihad denial is very important, by the way. It's one of the things I couldn't talk about today. But you see, by denying the evil of the adversary, you can continue to destroy your own society. If you accept that jihad is a problem and that Islam is evil, guess what you have to conclude? This is a superior, better society, and it is worth defending and protecting. Leftists can't make that conclusion. So jihad denial is very important. And so what this gentleman just said, guess how it's covered? I was traveling and I just put it on cable network. This is how they cover it. A man screaming God is great was screaming it in Arabic. I mean, where do you even begin? First of all, why do you need to say that? Why can't you say the words Allahu Akbar? Why do you have to say God is great in Arabic? Why don't you just say it in Arabic? And, as Nani and Daniel will explain, it's not God. Stop saying God. Allah is not God, number one. Number two, it doesn't mean God is great. Allahu Akbar means Allah. Allahu Akbar, it means Allah is greater than your God. And as Daniel has written in one of his articles, you better not be on the wrong side of the cockpit if a jihadist is screaming that. And there's a reason for that. But we need to deny that. The left needs to deny that.
They copied our books and manipulated them to their own purpose.
Excellent.
Jamie, thank you so much for your wonderful book and all the great work you do. I have to say that it takes incredible bravery to take on this particular fight. Kudos to you and to people like Noni. Really, just unbelievable. There's obviously a reason why there's only a handful of people like you and Noni and so many others here that fought Daniel. So we have to take the fight out to them. We can't just keep on apologizing for us. I think you said that so well. What do you recommend, Jamie, in terms of dealing with maybe not the leftists among us? They're irredeemable, I suppose. But those who consider themselves moderate or just liberals, and they can be reached. What sort of magic phrase would you say to them in an ordinary conversation? I mean, that's where the front line is.
I think that it would really be, first of all, you got to read David Horowitz's Take No Prisoners, because as a former leftist, he discusses all these tactics that you've got to use against the left. But I would stress, and this is very much one of his themes, is overall to stress our humanitarianism, to stress our hearts, because we, as I said, are with the victims. So we have to keep emphasizing that we are the lovers of Muslim people. We are the ones fighting for them. For instance, at the David Horowitz Freedom Center, a constant battle to expose the barbarities of Islamic gender apartheid, but to keep showing that it's the Democrats, for instance, as David emphasizes, that are the ones hurting minorities. It's the left that is allowing female genital mutilation to even happening on this territory. So to stress morally how our cause is actually better and has better results. But look, the problem with the left is that they think, I get this all the time. All right, Anderson Cooper just said this. This is the problem with conservatives. Why do you watch that? You know, conservatives think that canceling their cable is culture war. It's just a disaster. You don't leave the football field thinking you're going to win the football game. You have to engage. Conservatives like trim lawns and their bow tie and they're very nice. And then they end up like Mitt Romney arguing with Obama in that third foreign policy debate when he should have said to him, where were you during that time when those Americans were dying in Benghazi, etc. So we can't play nice. We have to engage in the cultural battle.
Okay, we got time for two more questions back here and then the gentleman at that table.
Oh, well, I had two questions, so I guess I'll just ask the one.
Only one.
Jamie, again, I want to thank you so much. It's been an honor and a privilege to meet you today and hear you talk. I also want to meet Daniel Greenfield. I guess I'm a fanboy.
It's more important to meet me than Daniel.
That's true. So the one question I'll ask is, you know, we've been talking about Allah a little bit today, and it's my suspicion that Muhammad essentially made up Allah. That if you look at the things that happened to Allah in his life, then suddenly he would miraculously go off and have some kind of vision, and Allah would tell him something that would clearly benefit him in the particular circumstance he was in. So I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that, whether you think you know, that could potentially be true or not. That's something that I think it's possible, but I don't know enough in order to sort of present that as an assertion.
Well, absolutely. I'll just say this. I think that all of a sudden these women that he got to sleep with because Allah told him that he could is a little bit of an eyebrow-raising thing. So he seemed to be making up things as he went along, that's for sure.
Okay, this will be the last question.
Jamie, thank you so much for all the good work you do. Your program is very inspiring. I've read your book already. It's fabulous. Thank you so much for that. Questions about...
A few more compliments about the book, please.
Question about Muslim Brotherhood. I know that they've made tremendous inroads into our government and local municipalities and state and federal governments. What are the chances, realistically, of the Muslim Brotherhood being declared a terrorist organization in the United States?
Oh, well, look, if you just want to know anything about the Obama administration, after the Holy Land Foundation trial, all the evidence of what CARE was up to, what all these Muslim Brotherhood front groups were up to, and Eric Holder shut down. They didn't pursue it. These are the enemies of our society, of our culture, that are boasting in their own documents, in the explanatory memorandum and the project. These are documents of the Muslim Brotherhood where they boast that they're going to destroy us by our own hands. And all this evidence comes up about these front groups, and Eric Holder shuts this down. So yes, there's a great hope that Donald Trump was hopefully going to start going even after these front groups, let alone the main belly of the beast, the MB. All I can say is we pray for it. He's made some great steps, crushing ISIS within 8 months. Obama could have done that. What was he doing for 8 years? Reversing these horrible rules of engagement in Afghanistan. The poor boys and girls in Afghanistan dying under Obama because of these evil rules of engagement. Trump's overturning that. So he's doing so many good things, but can his hands reach all of these things while they won't even let him build a wall, while they're investigating him? So I think this hero and providential godsend, if he could catch more breaths, and if he could have more people around him like John Bolton and these wonderful people, hopefully he could get around to that.
Thank you, Jamie.